Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Greetings to the 12 tribes scattered abroad. Great to have you tuning in this Sabbath. I have seen your comments, so I'll be on the chat afterwards because some of you were asking me to be a little more interactive, and I appreciate the feedback. It's just been a little bit harder for me to get back into the swing of things, being able to deal with all of the technology and the teaching. So just bear with me. I appreciate all of your support and all of your prayers and cards, and I'm just excited to be back and to be able to still teach and give glory to Yahweh for the life that he has given me through his blessed Son. Let's delve in this week. We're in chapter 14 of the Wisdom of Solomon in the Apocrypha. Turn in your Brenton Septuagint or whatever your translation is. What are you using here? Which one have you got? You've got the the Encyclopedia of Lost and Rejected Scriptures. That's a good one. Of course, you'll find this work in there. Many of you, of course, love the Brenton Septuagint like myself. So we're in chapter 14. Give us some thumbs up. Chat one another up in the chat, and if you're watching this afterwards, then put some edifying comments down in the comments section. And please do consider prayerfully supporting this ministry here at Torah to the Tribes. Your gifts and donations truly mean a lot, and if you do so desire, you can text Torah to that number down in the description and make a donation, or you can go to torahtothetribes.com/donate. Shabbat Shalom, and let's get into the Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 14. And we're going to see here what happens when misplaced trust is rooted in material idolatry and spiritual blindness. You're going to see a little bit of workmanship in this chapter, and it's going to use the wood makers and the idolaters and the idol makers as the subtext here as we go in. It's going to be providence versus rotten wood. Providence versus rotten wood. Where you place your trust, brethren, determines whether you float or sink in life. So let's delve into this. Again, verse 1. Again, one preparing himself to sail and about to pass through the raging waves calleth upon a piece of wood more rotten than the vessel that carrieth him. I mean, I love that. It's poetry, isn't it? You're calling upon the vessel on a piece of wood. I mean, what's going on here? One preparing himself to sail and to pass through the raging waves calleth upon a piece of wood more rotten than the vessel that carrieth him. And that always reminds me of the movie Gladiator, where he'd have those rotten pieces of wood, idols, praying for deliverance as he would to go out and to be in the gladiator forum. And again, we're seeing this in the context of a shipwreck. And think about the Apostle Paul, who went through these types of things, but he put his trust where we're supposed to put our trust, in the living Elohim. Verse 2, for verily desire of gain deviseth that, and the workman built it by his skill. But thy providence, O Father, governeth it, for thou hast made a way in the sea and safe path in the waves, showing that thou canst save from all danger. Yea, though a man went to sea without art, nevertheless thou wouldest not that the works of thy wisdom should be idle. And therefore do men commit their lives to a small piece of wood, and passing through the rough sea in a weak vessel are saved. So what's going on? The whole context is rooted in material idolatry and spiritual blindness. These people are putting their trust for safety in a worthless carved idol, a piece of wood more rotten than their own boat. Idolatry, what we're going to discover as we go through this chapter, idolatry really is all about misplaced trust. That's the root of it. Misplaced trust. What's really crazy, and people don't seem to realize it, is that they put ultimate hope into something weaker than what they already possess. And the Bible tells us that we are to possess these vessels, and to possess these vessels and to steward these vessels with the Ruach HaKodesh. We already possess these vessels. Why would we put our trust in something weaker than what we already possess? In Acts chapter 27, verse 25, Rav Shaliach Shaul, when he's on that ship to Rome, he doesn't pray to the wood, he doesn't pray to the sailors, but he declares, "There stood by me this night the angel of Elohim, saying, 'Fear not, Shaul, for I believe Yahweh.'" And in Hebrews chapter 3, verse 12, warns us of an evil heart of unbelief when you trust in created things over the Creator. So even though this was written a long time before the Brit Hadashah was penned, you can see throughout history this is a human problem. Idolatry, misplaced trust. If we go back to the tabernacle, Shemot, Exodus chapter 25 and onward, and the creation of the Mishkan and the furniture and the implements, what you're going to see that those ceremonial tools, they were consecrated for divine power, but they were not power themselves. And that's where the idolater gets, of course, in trouble. Something can be consecrated for divine power, sure, but the divine power isn't in the implement itself. So to place trust in the tool rather than the name, well, that invites spiritual disaster. If you lean on something that's already broken, don't be surprised when you fall with it. And of course, that's reminiscent of the scripture, is it not? In Isaiah chapter 36, you remember it, we were just there. Chapter 36, verse 6, it's written, "Behold, you are trusting in Mitzrayim, that broken staff of a reed, which shall pierce the hand of any man who leans on it, such as Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to all who trust in him." I mean, the metaphor, the analogy there is, of course, we know from the context of Isaiah that Judah was relying on Egypt to deliver her from Assyria. But Egypt, in this context, is the broken reed, the broken staff, and if you lean on it, it's going to pierce your very hand. So what this tells us is if when you trust something already corrupt and weak, it doesn't just fail you, it wounds you. It doesn't just fail you, it wounds you. Don't trust in something corrupt and weak. Rotten wood, the idol, is worse than the vessel itself, as we see in this chapter. Now in Ezekiel chapter 29, verse 6, "Because you have been a staff of reed in the house of Israel, when they grasped you with the hand, you broke and tore open their shoulders. When they leaned on you, you broke and made their loins to shake." So this theme is throughout Scripture. In this context, in Ezekiel chapter 29, pharaohs, of course, are false support. Those who grip false alliances then, well, you're going to be injured by the very thing that you trust in. Be careful, be careful. In Jeremiah chapter 17, verse 5, it's written, "Cursed is the man who trusts in man and makes flesh his strength, whose heart turns away from Yahweh." So trusting human systems over Elohim brings about spiritual ruin. And we live in a day and age where man trusts in human systems more than they trust in Elohim. I see it in the faith community all the time. People that claim to be devout, but they're really trusting in human systems. You can't trust in the human systems, especially as we go towards Messiah 2030. Just telling you. Now, in Tehillim, in Psalm 146, verse 3, it says, "Put not your trust in princes, in a son of man in whom there is no salvation." Human power cannot deliver us. Human might cannot deliver us. Idolatry starts with human ambition. The desire for profit, the desire for control. The idol then is a byproduct of greed. It's just dressed up as religion. In verse 3, even when men worship the wood, it's Yahweh's providence that actually carries them through and sustains them. Maybe they do worship the wood, but it's still providence that carries them through and sustains them. Because grace sustains even the foolish, does it not? We see it so many times. Grace sustains even the foolish. It's a humbling reminder that safety is from Yahweh alone, not from idols. In Matthew chapter 5, verse 45, it is written, "He makes his sun rise on the evil and the good." And in Acts chapter 17, verse 28, "In him we live and move and have our being." I am having a terrible time here. I need some mustache wax, guys. I'm telling you. I've got this one hair, and it's like poking, it's like going wild, and it's in my vision, and it's really irritating me. But I think I found it. I think I just laid it down. But yeah, any recommendations for mustache wax? Put it in the bloody comment section, would you? Good grief. Could you tell that I was having problems? Yeah, it was like going up, and it was like waving at me. I'm like, look, I'm trying to look at my notes here. I'm trying to read scripture, and I've got this crazy errant mustache hair or whatever the blooming heck it was. Anyway, sorry about that. I feel better. I've got a clear line of sight now. Oh, so much better. All right, let's have a sip and reflect before we go further. Well, maybe let's get some votes on. Should I get rid of the mustache, or should I keep the mustache? Thumbs up if I keep the mustache. Thumbs down if I get rid of the mustache, okay? So let me know. We'll do a little survey, and maybe I'll look different next week. Thumbs up if I keep the mustache. Thumbs down, I shave it, all right? Give us a clue. I might be able to teach better without it. You never know. Anyway, all that to say this. The weak wood becomes sacred only when touched by Elohim and for his purpose. Can we all agree on that? All that to say this. It isn't the boat that makes it through the storm. It's the captain and his call, because he answers your call to prayer. It's the captain and the call that he answers that gets you through the storm. Our vessels, these bodies, they may be weak. They may fail us sometimes. And sometimes in life, we may have weak resources. We may have a broken past, things that haunt us from our past. But when Yahweh governs us, he carries us so much further than any idol ever could. For a comparison, we're going to see in the text, with dead idols you get rotten wood, but by the hands of men you see that you become totally dependent on the nails that the men carry, and the worshippers carry the nails to prop up the idols, as you read in Jeremiah. But in contrast, of course, we serve a living Elohim, and with that we have providence, we have power, and we have paths that open up for us through the chaos. Just like the parting of the Red Sea, Elohim is able to carry his people even in our weak vessels. So this is a chapter all about misplaced faith, misplaced trust, idolatry, and the workings of it. Because misplaced faith happens when people put their hope in what their own hands have built. Wood, systems, traditions. But it's Yahweh alone who sustains and saves us. So, as Rav Shaliach Shaul said, consecrate your vessels, brethren, but don't worship them. Don't lean on dead weight. Build your life on something that actually floats. It's not the boat, it's the builder. And if he made the sea, he can carry you and I through it, even if it's chaos and even if it's a storm. I assure you, I am a living testimony to it. Look at verse 6. For in the old times also, when the proud giants perished, and the hope of the world governed by thy hand escaped in a weak vessel. So now he's alluding to the ark. Even though it sustained the seed, it was still just a weak vessel. Are we going to claim that it was like this perfect vessel that was pitched and tarred just perfectly and it was all because of Noah's might? No. And it actually contained the seed of the promise. But it wasn't the vessel. It wasn't the vessel. It was, in fact, a weak vessel and left to all the ages a seed of generation. For blessed is the wood whereby righteousness cometh. Think about that. That's very prophetic, isn't it, that phrase? Blessed is the wood whereby righteousness cometh. The true prophecy there. Even the humblest object, vessel, becomes powerful, but only when consecrated with divine foresight and divine wisdom. A small piece of wood, of course, is nothing without invoking the name of Elohim, the name of Yahweh, to be under his direction. It becomes an instrument of deliverance when it's under his direction. So, no self-doubt, brethren. No self-hatred. Don't despise your vessel. Because with the right governance of Yahweh's wisdom, even when we're weak, he can carry us through the storms in life. So don't hate yourselves. Maybe your body's not as strong as it used to be. Maybe it's failed you. Maybe your health isn't where it's supposed to be. But don't despise your weak vessel, because he will still carry you through. And even if you have a strong vessel, don't take pride in your strength, because it can change in an instant. And then it's ultimately Yahweh who saw you through anyway. So this is for all people, the strong and the weak. No self-doubt and no self-hatred. Don't despise your vessel, because with the right governance of Yahweh's wisdom, you can do anything. It was never the ark's engineering, but it was Yahweh's hand that preserved life. Our survival then through the storms of life, our survival through chaotic moments often comes down to trusting the plan when it doesn't make any sense to anyone else, and it doesn't even make sense to us. But like Noah, we have to move with faith. Not in the ark itself, but in the living Elohim who tells us how to build it. Go out there and build something. Go out there and create. Go out there and build something. Of course, all this points to the crucifixion, doesn't it? The ultimate wood by which righteousness came into the world through Yahusha's death. For blessed is the wood whereby righteousness cometh. Very succinct. But that's prophecy. That's prophecy right there. So the material, wood in this instance, becomes blessed only when bound to Yahweh's redemptive plan. Reminds me of the Galatians in the 3rd chapter. Mashiach redeemed us by becoming a curse on a tree. In 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 24, he himself bore our sins in his body on the tree, and by his wounds we have been healed. And Hebrews chapter 12, verse 2, the cross as the means, of course, of ultimate deliverance. So what happens here is the fragile actually becomes salvific. Think about that. But only when it's consecrated by Elohim. Whether Noah's ark or Yahusha's crossbeam, the blessed wood is a reminder that Yahweh ordains weak vessels like you and me. And he ordains weak vessels like the wood, and he uses them for eternal purposes. Now in verse 8 we come to the pivot point of this whole chapter, because it moves from the blessed wood of Noah in verses 5 and 7 to the cursed wood of idolatry. It creates this contrast between consecration and corruption. The same material, wood, can be holy or hateful, depending on its purpose. Verse 8, but that which is made with the hands is cursed, as well it as that he that made it. He, because he hath made it, and it, because it, being corruptible, it was called an Elohim. For the ungodly and his ungodliness are both alike hateful unto Elohim. Verse 10, for that which is made shall be punished together with him that made it. Therefore, even upon the idols of the Gentiles shall there be a visitation, because in the creature of Elohim they are become an abomination and stumbling blocks to the souls of men, and a snare to the feet of the unwise. For the devising of idols was the beginning of spiritual fornication, and the invention of them the corruption of life. For neither were they from the beginning, neither shall they be forever. For by the vain glory of men they entered into the world, and therefore shall they come shortly to an end. For a father afflicted with untimely mourning, when he hath made an image of his child soon taken away, now honored him as a god, which was then a dead man, and delivered to those that were under him ceremonies and sacrifices. Thus, in the process of time, an ungodly custom was grown strong and was kept as law, and graven images were worshipped by the commandments of kings, whom men could not honor in presence, because they dwelt far off. They took the counterfeit of his visage from afar, and made an express image of a king whom they honored, to the end that was by this their forwardness they might flatter him that was absent, as if he were present. Verse 18. Also the singular diligence of the artificer did help to set forward the ignorant to more superstition. For he, peradventure, willing to please one in authority, forced all his skill to make the resemblance of the best fashion. And so the multitude, allured by the grace of the work, took him now for a god, which a little before was but honored as a man. And this was the occasion to deceive the world. For men, serving either calamity or tyranny, did ascribe unto stones and stocks the incommunicable name. So, condemnation of idolatry at its very core in this pivot point section. Created things masquerading as the Creator. What a terror. The idol and the idolater themselves are both equally under judgment. Their destinies are actually intertwined. Of course, it's the first chapter of the book of Romans. They exchanged the glory of the incorruptible Elohim for an image and worshipped the creature rather than the creator. We see it in our world today everywhere. And in a day and age of clicks and likes and social media, remember, if you build your life on something fake, don't cry when it burns with you. When we tie ourselves to dead systems, whether it's false gods, false successes, false identity, then we'll eventually go down with them too. What the modern church seems to fail to comprehend is that idolatry isn't neutral. It's spiritual adultery. And idols entrap. They actually enslave the unwise and they corrupt the soul of man. It's a moral infection. Not just a bad idea, but a life-destroying practice that rots the soul at its core. You end up rotten wood. Mixing worship with manipulation corrupts the work and opens the soul to an inversion, a husk of dead energy. And you wonder why people walk around and they've got that dead energy and that vacant stare in their eyes. In life, bad habits, they don't just trip you up, brethren. They chain you up. Take it from me, from my youth. Idols enslave the people who bow down to them, whether it's an addiction, whether it's an ideology, or a carved image, it matters not. Idols, are historical constructs. They're invented by men, and they are destined for destruction. Temporary props, whether they be false gods, a false fame, or false image, they just can't support us. It's only an eternal purpose that does, brethren. I can't tell you how tired I am of people taking selfies of themselves. And you know, I was just in a foreign country and they had this big mirror up on the beach and people were walking past and doing all these poses, you know, and it's like they were making this life that is so not their life, you know. They crawl out of the gutters in front of this mirror, you know, and it's like self-worship. Idolatry comes from misguided grief oftentimes. And these people are grieving because they don't have the successes in their life that they really would like to have. So they manufacture that through Instagram and all of these social medias to try and be something. But it's a curated life. It's not real. And this then really makes the youth despondent because then they're trying to keep up and they don't. Their reality isn't that reality, but that's not reality. I mean, it's a cycle of deception, and it really is idolatry at its core. Temporary props. They cannot support us. We have to look to the living Elohim. Idolatry often comes, like I said, from misguided grief, turning to a lost loved one into a god. I mean, that's what they do. Pray to the ancestors. I mean, the First Nations people are always talking about the ancestors. And then you even see it with Christians. You know, somebody dies and then they get a tattoo of the birth date or the death date or something. And you're like, well, firstly, could I direct you to the book of Leviticus? And secondly, now we're tattooing ourselves for the dead as well. Isn't that exactly what it says in the Torah not to do? But then when you bring that up, you're just an outcast and a hater. And then you wonder why the world is in the way that it is today. In Acts chapter 12, verse 21, going back to the context, we see that Herod there, he accepts worship as a god, does he not? But what happens to him? Judgment strikes him dead. In Revelation chapter 13, in the future here, the beast will demand worship through an image. That's the ultimate counterfeit king. So we should be learning and teaching and watching about idolatry now. and idolaters and idols. We should be on guard, and we should look in our houses. When you're at home, if you're watching this at home, look around. What kind of statues, what kind of images do you have in your house? Do some stock taking and see. What did you pick up when you were on vacation in Thailand? What did you pick up when you went to Easter Island? Did you bring any of those cute little things into your house? Well, maybe you need to do some inventory. Maybe you've got some cute little eggs and they all go inside each other and little faces on the outside and they wobble and bobble. I don't know. Do an inventory. You'll be amazed at how you feel liberated spiritually when you clear out the rubbish from within your house. Because we live in a day where people will sell you a god if it makes them money or keeps them in power at the pulpit. And that's the problem. Stop falling for manufactured gods of church tradition because they exist to control, not to save. Which camera am I on? I'm over here. We're in verse 22. Moreover, this was not enough for them that they erred in the knowledge of Elohim. But whereas they lived in the great war of ignorance, so those great plagues they called peace. For whilst they slew their children in sacrifice, or used secret ceremonies, or made revelings of strange rites, they kept neither lives nor marriages any longer undefiled, but either one slew another traitorously, or grieved him by adultery. Verse 25, so that there reigned in all men without exception blood, manslaughter, theft, and dissimulation, corruption, unfaithfulness, tumults, perjury, disquieting of good men, forgetfulness of good turns, and defiling of the souls, changing of kind, disorder in marriages, adultery, and shameless uncleanliness. In verse 27, it goes on to say, for the worshipping of idols, not to be named, is the beginning, the cause, and the end of all evil. For thy either are mad when they be merry, or prophesy lies, or live unjustly, or else lightly forswear themselves. For insomuch as their trust is in idols which have no life, though they swear falsely, yet they look not to be hurt. Howbeit, on both causes shall they justly be punished, both because they thought not well of Elohim, giving heed unto idols, and also unjustly swore in deceit, despising holiness. For it is not the power of them by whom they swear, but it is the just vengeance of sinners that punisheth always the offense of the ungodly. So that was the chapter. There's a lot to unpack there. And the conclusion of the matter is misplaced worship. Well, it corrupts the entire social order. It turning false religion into full-scale moral corruption. What we worship shapes what we become. We have a moral inversion going on here. What Yahweh calls plagues, idolatry, human sacrifice, moral lawlessness, they rename peace. Ignorance of Yahweh equals social war, where a culture comes adrift calling vice virtue. And that's what we live in. Welcome to the new age. It's all about us. Of course, it was foreseen, like I said, in Romans chapter 1, where idolatry leads to Elohim giving them over to their debased minds, renaming unnatural vice as normal. And we see that in the book of Isaiah, which of course we just recently went through. In Isaiah chapter 5, very succinctly, it says, woe to those who call evil good, and good evil. And that's what this chapter really, really makes us wake up to. That there are deceiving spirits, and they name chaos for peace, making destruction look like harmony. I mean, we all just went through it in the past few years, but they were selling us poison, and they were calling it medicine. How is that not those that are calling evil good and good evil? People may package chaos as normal, but our spiritual survival requires us, brethren, to naming things truthfully. And how do we name things truthfully? We have to layer it through the word of Yahweh. That's the truth. In fact, the truth is, He is the way, the truth, and the life. The truth, of course, is the person of Mashiach. So false worship, as we see as this chapter concludes, leads to social breakdown, idolatry, infanticide, sexual perversion, treachery, and ultimately systematic bloodshed. Because worship and worship disorders, in this instant, disorder everything. When you bow to dead gods, all of your living relationships, they turn to rot, like rotten wood, just in the context of this. In James chapter 4, verse 1, it's written, wars and quarrels, they come from passions. You adulterous people, don't you know friendship with the world is enmity with Elohim? And in 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 1, it says, in the last days, people will be loving themselves on Instagram, lovers of self, unholy, without natural affection. You see it all around you, and maybe that's why it troubles me. Because when you align with unclean spirits, it invites moral contamination. The worshiper becomes like the very forces that he invokes, because worship shapes the worshiper. Holy invocations sanctify, and false invocations corrupt utterly. So there's a maxim. If the people you follow don't value life, they won't value yours either. If you build with the corrupt, you actually inherit their chaos. So we need to choose who and what we serve carefully, don't we? The worshipping of idols is the beginning, cause, and end of all evil, as Solomon says in this chapter. Because idolatry, it isn't just one sin. It's the root of all sin. Why? Because disordered worship disorients the soul. Everything else, your ethics, your sexuality, justice, it all collapses utterly around what's falsely enthroned. So then you have to do a self-inventory in your life. What's on your altar? What have you enthroned in your life? Because the Holy Scriptures stress hierarchy. And when we build a conflicting hierarchy, then we make ourselves enmity against the living Elohim. There's Elohim. Then there's the Malachim, angels. Then there's the Ruachim, the spirits. And then there's tools, ceremonial tools. And when we break that chain by worshipping what's beneath us, the whole order collapses, dragging us down spiritually and physically with it. So what you put at the top of your life, brethren, runs everything else underneath it. So this is a good chapter to do a self-inventory. Whatever sits on your altar, money, fame, relationships, controls your destiny. In verses 28 through 31, it says, they trust in idols which have no life, yet they swear falsely they will be punished. Idolaters think their false gods don't hold them accountable, but they do. But they do. Because true judgment, it doesn't come from the idol. It actually comes from the Elohim of all justice, the one whom they have ignored. In Galatians chapter 6, verse 7, Do not be deceived. Elohim is not mocked. Whatever a man sows, that too he shall reap. In Acts chapter 17, verse 31, Yahweh has fixed a day to judge the world by the man he appointed. So no idol can save an idolater from violating divine law, the Torah. Yahweh's Torah, you can't violate it. Only teshuvah, repentance, is what restores that alignment once you become misaligned. False gods won't save you when reality comes knocking. You can't con the judge. And we live in an age where people are trying to con the judge. Because worship sets the pattern for our lives. Worship sets the patterns for our lives. If our altar is crowded with idols, whether that be money, relationships, addictions, rituals, ego, we can't be surprised when our life mirrors that very corruption. Whatever you put at the top runs everything underneath it. If it's fake, so are you. If it's real, when you can survive anything. Seek first the kingdom of Yahweh, and all these things will be added to you. It's a good chapter. There's a lot in there. I'm going to have a look at the chat here, and if anyone wants to chat me up, put a little comment in the comments section or the chat here. I haven't done this in a while, so bear with me. And I'll repopulate the chat here. See if I can get to the bottom of it or the top of it. Hang on a minute. I want to get to all the messages. Maybe I can't work this. All right. Not sure if my chat's working, guys, here on my phone. Should be more organized. Unless you want to read something out, if you can see it on the computer, something coming up. John McCubin here, conflicting hierarchy brings chaos. And then the Libby link, Shabbat Shalom at the Libby link. Seventh edition Vayachatan was a good review, and I liked how Matthew used the scale of negative, neutral, and positive. Oh, that's a good one. That's an old one. Appreciate you going back through the Torah portions. That's really good at the Libby link. Anyway, I'm not getting the live chat coming up here. I just think I've got you archived for some reason on my phone. So next week I'll get my computer out. And if you want me to interact with you on the chat, I'll give it a go next week. Sorry about that, guys. But not quite getting it here. All right. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. And we'll catch you next Sabbath on the live stream. Be blessed, and thanks for tuning in. Shabbat Shalom. All right. Hey, how are you doing?